Hey, familia y amigos, Jay El Maestro, and I want to welcome you to the Don't Limit Your Identity podcast. And today we're going to have this episode is on Teachable Moments with my good friend, Terrell Wilson, who I refer to as one of the best financial advisors out there in the world because I love his heart, I love his passion, and I love how he leads in his community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Terrell. Terrell, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Jason A. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, to share my story, right, and just to dialogue with you, right, and have a great conversation here today.
Well, I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah.
This is something that I did during the pandemic, and I was doing it on Facebook Live, and it died out, and I wanted to bring it back, and I'm glad that you're the first guest as we bring this right back to our viewers and be able to share a little bit more about who you are. You know, I've enjoyed getting to know you these last couple years. Yeah. I know that when we first met, I tapped you on the shoulder and I said, "Hey, do you happen to be the mayor of Berwyn, Illinois?" And
Yes.
it was a great icebreaker. But I mean, I honestly, you looked super sharp that day, and it was a great event. But I'm glad I took that approach because I felt like from there it started a conversation to now I refer to you as my brother from another mother, and I look up to you, and I appreciate everything that you do, and it's just exciting. I love that we were able to connect from that point on and develop that friendship. You know, so I'm excited.
I appreciate that, brother.
Excited.
Thank you. Awesome.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to you is because of the opportunity I've had to, get to know you more. Mm-hmm. I feel like you and I share similar backgrounds with our upbringing, both being raised in the Chicagoland area around the 90s. And what I wanted to do with Teachable Moments, it's really to just allow our viewers to be able to hear a great conversation, but along with that, be able to take something away with it.
Sure.
So the ultimate goal is to be able to help share something of wisdom for them. And I'm sure they will when they hear more about who you are, what you do, your why behind it. So to start off with, if you don't mind kind of sharing with our viewers a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah. So, I grew up in, shall I say, the inner city of Chicago, right in the Austin community. And, it was a very, I'll use this word, interesting childhood that I had, but also it was a blessing, right? I had my grandmother, my grandfather, my mom, right? And we lived in that particular community for most of my childhood. My mom, unfortunately, suffered with some addiction. And as a result, my brother and I had to move out to Pennsylvania back in 1994. So April of 1994, we moved to Pennsylvania with our dad, and we were there for a couple of years. And my mom got well, and we came back. I came back, shall I say. And then we were living up in the Rogers Park area. And from there, man, it's just, life just progressed, right? We went from Rogers Park to Bellwood, and then, growing up, went on, go to college and do all of that. And have always been, involved with family and church and ministry work and things like that. And so you fast forward today, I'm married, my wife and I, Maricela. We, enjoy our large family of 6 children. So we're kind of a blended family, and we're like the Brady Bunch, right? So we have 3 boys, 3 girls. I'm also in ministry today, and then also a financial advisor. So that's kind of the quick, the really, quick story of kind of how things started back in late 80s, going into 90s, and then up to where we are here today.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
You mentioned your grandmother, is that right?
Yes.
And I touched on that because actually today may he rest in peace, but my grandfather passed away 3 years ago. And today would have been his birthday. He would have celebrated his 88th. But
yes.
My grandfather played a vital role in my life, was super important. I looked at him as my second father. And you touched on family and God and faith and all those beautiful core values, which are things that I've learned growing up as well, taught by my parents and my grandparents. And I appreciate you sharing, being transparent with our viewers as far as how you ended up moving to Pennsylvania and so on.
Yeah.
What did you learn during that experience while you were living in a whole other state? I mean, am I touching on that a little bit?
Sure. So, I'll dive a little deeper in that. I think, that's a great question, right? Just like most or a lot of children growing up in the inner city of Chicago, where you're in a dynamic situation where, maybe mom is, single mom and she's working hard to take care of her children. Maybe dad is there, maybe not. Maybe he's, in the streets or in jail or unfortunately passed away. And you have grandparents that are there, right, to help and to cultivate and keep the family cohesive, to operate in a cohesive manner and to stay together, right? And so in my particular situation, my grandmother unfortunately passed away in April of 1994.
Sorry.
And thank you. And at that point was when my mom made the decision that she would change her life, right? And, kicking an addiction, man, is incredibly difficult. Being my age now, looking back, I can say that I know that it was challenging for her. Yes. Obviously, being a kid at that time, I just wasn't quite aware of how strong the addiction was. But, what ended up happening when my grandmother passed in 94, my dad then said, all right, me and my older brother, we're going to go to Pennsylvania with him. So we moved, 1,500 miles, whatever it is, away from Chicago. And it was a culture shock. Right. Okay. I mean, we were in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I can tell you, I remember this one story where my brother and I, we were just used to, like, you lock the doors, you close the blinds, you make sure your windows are locked and all that good stuff, right? For protection, right, in the inner city. And now being in Allentown, I remember riding bikes with my younger brothers, and we're riding around, we're having a good time. So we get tired. We're like, all right, let's go in the house and rest for a minute and, have some water or whatever, and then come back out later. And I remember grabbing the bike and walking it into the house. And so my brother, he goes, what are you doing, man? I'm like, I'm taking the bike in the house so it won't get stolen, right? And in my mind, I'm thinking, back home, right? Chicago, exactly. Like, that's just how it was back then, man. You leave your bike on the step and you run in the house to use the bathroom. There's a possibility that you'll come out and that bike is gone, right? And that has happened to us and the people that are around us. But so we laughed on that. He's like, bro, no one's gonna steal your bike here. Like, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. I'm like, are you sure? And long story short, that bike probably sat out there for weeks, man. No one ever touched it or anything like that. So my point of it is, to bring up that story, is it's the perspective, right? I came from one perspective of having what, some may feel to be a challenging, upbringing and an environment and so on and so forth, to go to a different environment where you didn't really have to worry about that. Right? You didn't have to worry about walking to the store and are you going to have to fight somebody or are you going to get robbed or something like that, right? It was more of a calmness, right? And so that's when we really got introduced even to other cultures, right? So we lived in like this smaller community in a townhome, and our neighbors, we had people from all walks of life. So you get an opportunity to experience different people, right? And understand like how people operate. And I got to say, I think that was a blessing for me, because that interaction back when I was, 9, 10 years of age has helped me in my life now, being, 41. Right. So yeah, so it's good. It's a good experience, I'd say.
I appreciate you sharing that. And, once again, I'm very sorry for the loss of your mother. I know it was years back, but still.
Yes, thank you.
Along with that, I want to celebrate your mom, because she found a purpose. She found her why. Yeah. As you said, that's not easy. Any addiction to break is not easy, but she made a commitment. And she made it happen, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think that, and I can appreciate that. I think what one can learn from that situation is, you could be in a very challenging environment, a very challenging situation, but you have to make the conscientious decision to say, I want to get out of this, and I want something better for myself, my children, if you have any, or future children that you may have down the line. And so you got to make that choice. And with my mom, she made the choice in 94, and it took some time to kind of get things recalibrated for her. Right. But she was able to go on, and she went into rehab, and she did that for the 2 years that she promised she would do. And when I came back, she was in school. And then the next thing you know, she's graduating with her degree. Forgive me, I forget the title. I know it's with and something around like counsel, mental health counseling or something like that, is where she obtained her degree in. And she went on to be a counselor, to counsel other people, other women that were going through what she had experienced. And so, when you think about that how life, right, that trajectory of life and how things have happened from 94 into her passing in 2008, 2009. It's really understanding that if you really want to put in that work hard, to change your environment, to change your life, it can be done, right? You just have to have that motivation to do it. But I'll add one thing. So I have a daughter that was actually born on my mother's birthday.
Oh, wow.
And so they got an opportunity. My daughter was born in 2007, and they spent that full year. My mom passed in 2008, August of 2008, and it was just a blessing, right? Born on the same day as my mom, and she kind of looked like my mom too.
Wow.
when I look at her, but I think again, it's all about making the choice and then sticking with it, right? It's gonna be hard. No one said it's gonna be easy. You just got to put in that commitment and that time.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you nailed it when you said, it's not hard, but it's the commitment.
Yeah.
One of the things I share with many is that life is a battlefield, and no matter what, just continue to fight, continue to push, especially if you found that purpose and that why.
Yep.
And what your mother went through, I love that she was able to apply that as a career path to help inspire other women out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's beautiful.
Yes,
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Now, you touched on between living in the inner city of Chicago and then living in Pennsylvania and everything about perspective. Now, would you say when you lived in the inner city of Chicago, was that surrounding or that environment a rough area? Was there crime or violence, or what would you share on that end?
I think a little bit of everything you just said, right? I think, where we were, I remember distinctly, my older brother and I would walk to school or walk me home and all that kind of stuff. And so, there's times where you have to run so you won't be involved in anything that you don't want to be involved in. And sometimes you got to fight, right, to get out of a situation so people aren't bullying you or treating you a certain kind of way. In other words, defending yourself.
Correct.
And so I remember, it was rough to walk to certain restaurants, right? I'm not going to mention any names, but to walk to certain restaurants and walk down those streets or what have you to get there. But you got to look around and make sure that, people aren't going to jump out and try to ask you what gang are you affiliated with and all of that. And that wasn't our life, right? We were from the inner city, but we were not a part of, gangs and drugs and things like that. But of course we were around people that were. So yeah, it was, I'd say it was rough, but, we were a close knit family and we tried to stay together and that's how we got through it, I guess.
Love it.
Yeah.
I know that I've spoken to many out there and like you share a similar story about the inner city and also across violence and things like that and being concerned about being asked, okay, what gang are you affiliated with and so on. How would you share with the viewers that although that was a part of your environment, you were able to avoid not allowing that to become your identity?
Yeah. So a couple of things I would think about and in response to that. So I was 8, 9, maybe 10 years old when we left Chicago. So I didn't have that. I didn't have the same experience as my older brother. He was 4 years older than I am.
Okay.
And so he is 4.5 years older than I am. And so his experience is very different. He had that experience of where, people wanted him to claim a particular, gang affiliation or what have you. He had more of the hand-to-hand combat, we'll say, in that time period. For me, I watched him be kind of like the protector to make sure that I was good. And so I didn't have to really experience a lot of that on a day-to-day basis. I knew it was there. I knew it was, prevalent in the community. But I had my close group of friends that those are the people that we hung out with, one of which, we've been friends now, almost 36 years, right? Awesome. And we grew up right across the street from one another. His grandparents and my grandparents were like the first African-American families on the block that we grew up on. And so their children played together and grew up together. And as a byproduct of that, him and I, right, are extremely close. And that's my brother. And so, I think that is what was incredibly important for me, is making sure I just stick with those individuals whom I know were good people and doing the right things, right? And not that other folks aren't. It's more so of like, we just didn't want to be involved in things that are going to get us, in trouble or things like that.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned that you and Mari are a blended household, and you would refer as kind of the Brady Bunch between 3 girls, 3 boys. And
Yeah.
Can you share with viewers that are either in a similar situation or not? Like, how was that experience for the two of you?
Yeah, I'm gonna look right here. I'll tell you, it is. Pray for us. That's what I'll tell you. No, I think it's a growing experience, right? There's growing pains, right? So, like anything, when two families, let me step back. When a couple is coming together and they get married and they're going through that process, right? Not to get too biblical, but the scriptures in the Bible that talks about when a husband and a wife come together, they become one. That becoming one process may not feel too good all the time, right? It might be challenging, right? Because you're learning each other's personalities and habits and attitudes and viewpoints and all these different things that are happening. So when you do that, and then also you're bringing in children into the mix that are also from different backgrounds and different communities and things like that, it can also be something that is challenging. And I think for us, and it took years for us, it's really been trying to have that open communication, understanding that, yes, we got two sets of children that have two different sets of upbringing and so on and so forth. And so we got to try to navigate through it. And I'll tell you, we don't always get it right? And no parent does. But we do the best that we can with the information that we have about and the things that we want to do, right? In the family. So, our children may say something very different, but I think it's more of my wife and I learning to be on the same page. So regardless of, are we disciplining one child or another child, or if it's did they come from you or did they come from me, none of that really matters. What matters is, are we being consistent? Are we treating our children fairly? Are we making the right decisions for them? Are we making sure we're holding them accountable for the things we want them to do so that they can then go on to be successful, right? It's always been about, you may not like us right now because we're saying, no, you can't do X, Y, Z, but it's for your betterment. It's for your good, right? We're not trying to just, and another thing we've often said is, we weren't trying to be your friend, right? We're trying to make sure that you have friends out there outside the house. I'm your father and mother, right? And so we have a different perspective, and we want to share with you the things that are going to help you, right? So if you listen, and I think all of us have probably been in a situation like that where our parents have said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, because of, a particular outcome that they feel may happen, or maybe they've done those things themselves. And many of us say, okay, that's just mom or dad just talking. Right. Like, all right, do I really want to listen to what they're saying? Like, nah, I'm going to go out here and do whatever I want. And then you do, you go against what they've tried to tell you not to do, and then you feel the sting of a mistake, right? Then you can't go back to mom and dad and say, Mom, why didn't you shield me from this? And we're like, we told you not to. Right. You just made that decision to do it. So, blending a family together, it takes time, it takes communication, it takes patience, it takes understanding that even in a family that is where everyone's from the same mom and dad, that can be difficult as well. It's just taking that time to understand where everybody is and being patient. It just takes time.
I know that you and I share similar, right? Nancy and I, my two oldest, I hate the word stepchildren, so I refer to it as my kids, my bonus kids. I mean, however way.
Yep.
But I know in the beginning, like you said, it's not easy, right? And it takes time. And I know that you and I share similarities when it comes down to faith as believers and God. And going back to my grandfather, may he rest in peace, Ramon Antonio Alicea, and the family and the community in Puerto Rico known him as Papi Mino. Papi Mino would always talk about God and having God in the center of everything in our lives. I know this of you, but I know our viewers don't, or some may not. But how does God tie into your life in general? And I'd love for you to speak on that.
Yeah. So let me amend a little bit of what I shared about the childhood, and it's what I failed to mention that I mentioned now is church was huge.
Okay.
Right. So I remember walking and walking with my great grandmother, and we'd walk down the street to our church, and at that time I was young, but I'm like, I wake up before she would and go upstairs and open the door. Hey, grandma, you coming? We call her Graham. Graham, you coming? Are you ready? And she like, yeah, I'm getting ready. Let's go. And then me and her walk down to the church. And then it became a time where I started playing the drums at the church.
Okay.
And so I would play. My uncle was the bass player. And so we've always been, church and God has always been knitted into our fabric, so to speak. And so when it comes to how that continued to grow in my life, I think from an early age, just accepting who Jesus Christ is, and I obviously didn't know who Jesus was back then. I'm a kid at that time, but kind of hearing about Jesus and hearing about God and hearing about the church and so on and so forth, and having that kind of as the foundation, I think has been incredibly important, right? And then as I got older, it just has stuck with me, right? And so I went from playing the drums to singing in a group. My grandfather is a member of the Wings of Heaven, and him and I used to sing all across Illinois. He, to me, is one of the best guitarists that I've ever seen. And my uncle, his son, is one of the best bass players that I've ever seen. I mean, he can hear something and boom, he's going at it, man. I mean, he's dynamic in what he does, and he plays for a church in the inner city of Chicago right now today. But over time, I just made sure that, I always liked to be involved in the church. I love to, I love the word, and I would do Bible studies and all these things. And that doesn't, mean that I didn't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that I didn't fall short or don't still fall short, right? It doesn't mean that those things don't happen. We're human. And I believe that God knows that we're going to make these mistakes in life. He prefers us to take one road. But sometimes we make decisions, and we feel I used this term earlier, the sting of our decisions that we make, right? In other words, the consequences of the decisions that we make. So, when I think about my life today, God is first and foremost, right? We give glory, we give honor to God, because if it had not been for the Lord on our side, right, where would we be? So it's God, and then it's my wife, and then it's children, and then it's everything else. And so, God has blessed us to have a ministry and to be a part of a ministry that, have an opportunity to minister the word on a monthly basis and things like that. So I think having faith in Jesus is, it's number one, right? It is number one. And there may be some people that may hear, right, what we're talking about and say, oh, I don't want to hear about, church, or I don't want to hear about Jesus Christ and so on and so forth. And I'll just encourage you, just try Jesus, right? Just try. Just read the Bible, right? Just open up, and right now with technology, you can Google a script. Yeah, you can ask Google or OpenAI or ChatGPT or whatever it is, right? And you can say, give me a scripture for faith, and it's going to do that. And you can read that, and you can understand it. And so one thing I've always told folks is just make sure that whatever you read, that you read it in context. Right, that you don't just take stuff out, and maybe you were going to ask me this question or not, but when growing up, you hear all of these, for the lack of better terms, tagline scriptures that people have said, and when you hear it, it's like, man, that's good, that's powerful. But now, as an adult and as a teacher and a minister in the gospel, it's more so I can take that scripture, but now let's read it in the context. Who wrote it? Who they write it for? What was the purpose, right? And what was the meaning behind why the writing was written? And then you go from there. So
well, that's very important because I've heard it as well through our pastor. Like sometimes people will pick a certain section out of the scripture, but when you read it in its full entirety, it's not the true meaning that you took away when you first initially read from it. So appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate you sharing that. Now, looking at where you're at today, and as I shared in the beginning of my intro about you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I don't say that. I don't throw it loosely. You, to me, are by far the best financial advisor I've ever met. And I've been in banking I was in banking for 20 years before I started my insurance business.
Yes.
And I've met many out there, but you truly lead from the heart. You truly lead with a desire to really educate. And anyone that I've had in front of you has expressed that. Yeah. No one could ever feel ashamed that I'm just starting this investment account for myself. you really makes, to me, in my opinion, you really make people feel like $1 million investment and $1 million client.
Yeah.
So can you talk more about that? Like where the space you're in today, why are you the way you are? Because I'm telling you, in the 20 years of banking, I mean, there was advisors that would tell me, Jay, they don't have 100,000 in investable assets.
Yeah.
I can't talk to them. And
Sure.
I'm like, really? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I believe I shared this story with you where I had this elderly lady who finally trusted me to bring money that she was storing at home because she shared her story as far as why she didn't trust banks, and comes in with a bag with $75K. And the advisor telling me I can't sit down with her because she doesn't have 100,000. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, I stepped in at that moment. I'm like, you're gonna sit down with this lady because she brought in her hard working money, and she's finally trusting us. But I have had my daughter, I've had family sit down with you, and it's just getting that first retirement plan set, and you made them feel like they just poured in so much, and I love that about you, and that's why I'll highlight that forever. I'll make sure anyone that I come across, hey, you need to sit down with TW, Terrell Wilson, the financial advisor who's going to give you the best advice out there. He's going to fit your needs. So with that, turning it over back to you.
Yeah, man. I think, thank you for first off. I think that that's amazing. And obviously I feel the same about you and your practice and what you do with your business and how you lead with education as well. That to me is my heart, right? My heart is to educate people. Yes, I got to make money for my family, right? Everyone has to feed their family. But for me, in the business, in the space that I'm in, and I've been in a situation, where there were limitations in terms of client assets that you can take on, and where you would take on a certain, if you take it on and it's under a certain dollar amount, you're not getting compensated. But sometimes, I have to do it because that's the best thing for the client, right? It's not just for me. And so my heart is educating people. Sometimes I over-educate. And some people just stop me and say, okay, you shared enough. No worries. We trust you. We know you're knowledgeable, so on and so forth. And we can talk about why I over-educate as well, maybe a little bit later. But I think it's for me is I want to help people. I want to see people succeed from a financial perspective. I want to give them the information that I've learned, and I want to help them to reach their goals. And I think that someone that has, $50 to start or $5,000 to start is just as important as the person that has 5 million or 50 million even. And those people, and I've come across those folks. I remember at the bank that I used to work for, where there were people that were back then in their 40s and 50s and never have written a check and didn't know how to write a check to someone or didn't know how to balance their checkbook. And for me, it's something where I'm like, dude, you should know how to do this.
Right.
But on the flip side, I'm like, oh, you just haven't been exposed to it. No one's ever shared. No one's ever even taken the time to tell you, like, this is a checkbook. And this is why you want to write out a check. Because maybe back then, you write the check out and you give it to someone, you have a paper trail, right? The person's name is on there. They're signing the back of it. You can see what bank they deposited in. The money has been, the transaction has been fulfilled. Today you just got Zelle and Cash App and Venmo, and that keeps record for you today. So it's really about the education. It's about helping people understanding that you don't have to start with the $1 million account. You can start right where you are. But the challenging thing I think for most people is starting. Right? They talk about it like, man, I want to change my financial life. That's great. Let's get started. You ready? Right. Oh, well, wait, I got to do this or I got to do that. Okay. Well, when you're ready to have that, right, let's talk more deeply about it and let's get serious about putting an actual plan in place. And so that's kind of, where I am, right? So that's one of the reasons why even when I meet with a client for the very first time, it's about, let me find out about you. Who are you? Right? I'm not even talking about numbers yet. Like, just tell me who you are. Like, what do you feel about money? What has been your experience with money? Because what we find is like most folks, they have some type of attachment with money. Right. Either you grew up in poverty and so you hold on to money because you feel like you never want to go back into poverty again. Maybe you grew up wealthy and you may throw money around like it's candy, right? And maybe you don't have the proper management skills to manage that money. But wherever you are, I want to find that out and then help you navigate through, okay, how do I get to goal A, which might be a comfortable retirement, and maybe you're age 45 today, and you didn't save anything from other previous places of employment that you've worked, how can we help you get on track? What does that look like? And that's kind of the way that we take care of clients, man.
No, and I've seen it, I've experienced it, and
Yeah.
anyone that I've referred to has shared the exact same thing. It's a whole different approach.
You got it.
And that's where I feel like that's where the biggest separator is, that you make them feel like a friend.
Sure.
Regardless if it's the first time they met you. It's not treating them like they're just a number. And you said something key was, let's talk about you.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself is different. Like, when does an advisor, at least from my experience, really take that approach?
Sure.
And understanding the money, because it's emotional for some.
Absolutely.
And how does that work, and how does that apply, and how does that help them? So I love that you share that. I mean, as always, I think super highly of you on that. And I love that that's your style and that's your approach, because I truly feel that's where people built that comfort to say, okay, you know what? Let me share more. Let me look at what other options that Terrell have to recommend to help me make the right financial decision. So
that makes sense. That makes sense. And I think, touching on the education piece around how do we work with with clients that we serve, and when I mentioned over-educate sometimes, in the business of being a financial advisor, there's not many that look like me, right? That are in this industry. Sometimes, and this is what I found, I can only speak for myself, it's a mental thing sometimes where I got to show that I have the education. I got to show that I have the skill set or the knowledge and the wherewithal to manage that money for you. Like, I got to show that to you. I got to show that to you. Because maybe back in the back of my mind, I think maybe you're thinking, is this guy skilled enough, or does he know what he's doing, and so on and so forth, right? And that, I'm going to say, I take that upon myself as something that, I'm learning to navigate out of in terms of feeling like I'm inferior to have some conversations, right? And you never think that, but that happens sometimes for me and I stop myself now where I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Wait. No, I know what I know the information. I know what I'm doing. I might not be, the individual that's managing the $1 billion portfolios out there. But I'm there helping the average everyday family, live a little bit better, right? Protect their children, right? And it hurts my heart when I go onto social media and you see so many GoFundMe pages for people who have unfortunately passed away prematurely, right? Or just earlier by accident or what have you. And families now have to go out and ask for assistance. And I know you've seen this obviously in your business where, we're trying to educate, like something just as simple as life insurance. I'm not just trying to sell you a policy so I can make money. No, I want you to have a policy so in the event, God forbid, something happens to you, your family is taken care of, right? The least of their worries is finances, right? Now they can just deal with, having to go through the emotional, stages of grief and things like that with the passing of a loved one. But it's incredibly difficult to go through that and then still think about, like, now, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay the mortgage, the rent, the car note? How am I going to send our children to college? How am I going to, all of that, while still trying to also deal with the emotional loss.
Correct.
Right? And so, that's one of the things that I just share, and I digress, but I share that with folks when we're meeting, because I think that is incredibly, incredibly important. And if you want to have generational wealth, that is a way, right, to be able to do it, right? Like, last thing I'll say, and again, and I'll digress, because you go onto social media, you see all of these reels of, like, go get this type of insurance policy because you can make $1 million off of it, and go get this, or go invest here, or go invest there. I just challenge people to take a step back, right, and make sure that you're receiving the right type of financial education and recommendations for you specifically. Correct. Right? Because, like, what I may recommend for you might be different than what I might recommend for someone else. Right. So it's really having that kind of like that tailored approach.
That's perfectly said, because you're absolutely right. Like, one of the things, as you shared in my line of business, owning my insurance agency, we lead with education. Yeah. And I had people say to me, hey, Jay, give me a life insurance quote. And I'm like, well, again, kind of like similar to your same approach is, well, I could throw out a quote out there, but it's not going to benefit you.
Yeah.
The best way to benefit you is having that sit down and have that conversation, find out what do you really want this life policy to do for you.
Sure.
And I refer to it as a gift of love, because you love your loved one so much, you want to remove that burden.
I like that. Yeah.
It's think about them, right? I've seen, as we touched on the inner city upbringing, I've seen, sadly, and I'm sure you could agree, many people that were around when we were kids that sadly are no longer around.
Yeah.
Who relied on GoFundMe.
Yeah.
And now, so I've also seen where the ones that did have life insurance, what options it gave them.
Sure.
Not just burial, but if you don't know how you're going to grieve, some people need to go to work. Some people need to take time off. At the end of the day, it gives you options. And you said something also, generational wealth.
Yes.
The wealthy, the ones that are educated on the finances.
They know about it.
They know about it. And I've had people say, hey, well, what if they have money? They don't need life insurance. I said, you're wrong. The one that has the money understands that they should have life insurance to continue passing that on.
That's right.
And,
that's right. I think that's good. That's good, right? And as you learn more about life insurance and the benefits there, you're right. People that are wealthy, they understand that there's some benefits around having life insurance, right? And what it can do, even from a tax perspective, and which we ain't got to get into all of the intricate details of it, but again, that's one of the reasons why I like to lead, like just as you, leading with that education, helping people truly understand, and maybe you've experienced this, like as you're talking to someone, you can kind of see the light bulb, so to speak, come on.
Correct.
When you're taking your time to get to know them and understand, and you can see them saying like, oh, okay, now that makes sense.
Right.
Yes, okay, it's not going to cost me $3,000 a month to get a life insurance policy. It's only $30 a month. Let's get it done, right? So things like that, yeah.
I call that the aha moment.
That's about, yeah. Not the light bulb, yeah. I was trying to think about like what, yeah.
I like the light bulb, the aha moment, but at the end of the day, I've had people say, Jason, which is the best life insurance? I've heard of all these different types. And the best life insurance, I'm going to look straight at the camera, is the one you have. Just get one started.
Yes.
You need it, familia, amigos. There's two things in life that's guaranteed. That's death and taxes. You can't avoid it. I know that this is a subject you and I could continue going on much longer, but I appreciate that. I do want to highlight, I did see recently some updates on social media, and being a client of yours, I received an email, some nice accolades out there that's taken place. Do you mind sharing with our viewers what is it that I'm talking about?
Yeah. So in the industry, you're able to study, you're able to deepen your knowledge and your education around the area of finance, investing, estate planning, tax management, etc. And so I recently completed a certification, which now makes me a chartered financial consultant. And I took that course through the American College of Financial Planning or Financial Services. And so they've been around since I think 1923, something like that. But, why that's important to me, I think it just gives me additional knowledge and skills that perhaps I didn't have before going through that course time period, right? And going through all these different modules and reading and studying and taking these proctored examinations after each one of the sessions. But I do think that it's incredibly important, again, in my space specifically, to just enhance knowledge, right? There's other certifications that I'm in the process of working on, and I'll keep studying for those and be prepared to sit for those examinations. But from an education perspective, I think that's what's important for me. And I think if I'm going to work with people, I need to continue to broaden, or deepen, shall I say, not broaden, but deepen my knowledge in the space of financial and wealth management. I went to college. I have a bachelor's degree in finance and a master's and a master's degree where I focus. Well, actually, it's the opposite. My bachelor's is in accounting, and my master's was MBA, where we focused on finance, and then these other credentials that I'm kind of working on. So it's a blessing, right? These things are not easy. It takes time. It takes commitment, right? It's time away from family, time away from friends, really, to open the book and get out and study and get prepared for these tough examinations that are coming up. So I'm going to keep taking it a day at a time, but I appreciate you allowing for me to highlight that certification.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Yeah.
And I love that, right? I always share that we should always be a student, always looking to continue to grow, self-develop, and you continue to master your craft, and that's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, you got it. Yes, I can appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've touched on, a little bit about your upbringing. We talked about family, talked about God. We talked about your current career. What would you say is your strong why? What gives you that fuel, right? Because you said just now it required commitment, required dedication, hard work. You're separating time from other things, right? If you're into sports, I know you like sports. You're taking time away from watching that game, taking time from a date night with your wife, or spending time with kids. What's your why that allows you to create that fuel for you to put that commitment behind what you want to accomplish?
So my why, it is interesting, but I think God is so good in this respect that it all ties in to the same why. And it's, I want to help people, right? So even with my my ministry, right, Terrell Wilson Ministries, on Tuesday nights, I go live, or we have a pre-recording, and on that, I'm trying to help people move forward in life despite anything that they may have experienced. We've all have had some challenging times. We've all have lost loved ones, friends, and individuals who were extremely close and pivotal in our lives, right, and critical to our lives that have brought us to where we are today. And so I want to help people on that front, right, to how do I help you move forward? And then in that same vein, I'm giving you some biblical principles to kind of help tie it all together, right? Because we've all experienced some things that we sometimes are like, well, why, God? Like, why me? Right? Like, why am I going through this? Why am I dealing with this sickness or this issue or this circumstance? Or why is my loved one going through that and everybody else seems to be partying and having fun? So I want to help in that regard. And from a wealth management perspective and business perspective, it's the same. I want to help people. Right? Like I there was a study, and I don't remember exactly who completed the study, but it was many, many years ago, where it said the average person that was in retirement did not have $5,000 in the bank.
Wow.
You're in retirement now. It's like, your highest earning years are now behind you, right? Because you're in retirement. And so, that kind of broke my heart. I'm like, my goodness, man, how can we get this information out? How can we help more people so that when you are in retirement at 65 or maybe at 62, you're going to retire, whatever that age is for you, you have sufficient savings, you have sufficient income, you have sufficient financial plans, right? That's going to help you to get to where you are and then sustain you throughout your retirement years as well. And so, for me, that overarching why is I just want to see people succeed. I want to help you. It's not about me. I firmly believe that as you help others, it's going to come back. Amen. Right? How it's going to come back, I don't know. That's not my job to to know exactly how it's going to come back. But I believe, God, that it will come back. We just got to keep moving forward. So Amen. I think that would be the overarching why.
Amen. I appreciate that. Thank you for answering that. You're absolutely right. I always believe givers gain, but give with a good heart.
Yes.
With the intent of knowing if nothing comes immediately, you're okay.
All is
that
well.
You're always satisfied. And like you said, keep moving forward.
That's right. That's right.
That's awesome. So, Terrell, I know we could continue more and more, but I know that we're not going to, this is the start of a new season for me with Teachable Moments and the podcast.
Sure. Yeah.
But I know that the viewers will like what they see, and we'll do this again.
Yeah.
But is there anything that maybe I didn't ask that you wanted to share and take this moment to?
Yeah, no, I think that, we talked about life, my upbringing, and travels to Allentown, Pennsylvania. Talked about ministry. We talked about pretty much everything, man. I think that what you have here in this podcast, I think, is incredibly important for people to lock in, right? So I want you to lock in and like and share and commit to supporting Jason's ministry here, and I think that not limiting yourself, right?
Thank you.
Is, I use this word a lot, I know, incredibly important, but don't limit yourself. Don't put yourself in this box, right? That these are the only things that I can do. Have the courage to step out and launch out on faith. I'll give you a quick story. Like when I was starting my ministry, right, Terrell Wilson Ministries, and I've spoke in front of hundreds of people before, sung in front of thousands of people before, and never really had an issue with that. But getting the mic and the camera and hitting live, like go live, oh my God, that was daunting for me.
Oh, that was for me as well.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I got something stuck in my teeth and somebody sees it, or I say the wrong scripture, or whatever that might be? And I remember calling my older brother, the one that I was sharing with you about a little bit earlier, and he was like, bro, like, okay, you make a mistake. So what?
Right.
Go back next week and correct it if you need to, or if not, just keep moving forward. He said, don't you always say keep moving forward? And I said, yes. That's exactly what I've been saying for years. And it's like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to move forward and limit yourself? Or are you going to launch out and you're going to go do it? And so hand shaking, voice shaking, I still hit go live and we started doing it. And so, if I can leave, your viewers and your followers with anything, it would be exactly what the title of your podcast is, right? Do not limit your identity, right? Don't limit yourself. Find that courage, and I'm challenging you to find that courage to move forward, right? Whether you're dealing with something that you feel been keeping you back from achieving whatever it is you want to achieve in your life, I want to encourage you today to just stand on the fact that you do have the ability to move forward, but you have to make that decision. You have to make that choice, and you got to be courageous in your life. And I believe you put God first, man, the Holy Spirit to guide you and help you to navigate through things. And let me tell you one thing, you're not going to always get it right. I think in this society, man, everyone's trying to be perfect, right? I mean, you go on to, TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. Everybody's trying to show that their life is so perfect. But behind the scenes, you have absolutely no idea what those people might be, in fact, dealing with. And in fact, there's a lot of them that are coming out that have said that when the camera goes off, their life is in disarray. Mm-hmm. So don't just believe everything that you see on these social media sites and all the makeup and the glit and the glamorous things. Stay in your lane, right? Do what it is that you believe is in your heart for you to do. Don't limit yourself and don't limit God, man, and move forward.
Amen. Thank you. Now, lastly, how does anyone connect with you, whether it be through a website, phone number, online? Because I do want to encourage the viewers that, as you heard Terrell Wilson share his story, an amazing brother of Christ, my good friend, great financial advisor, make a point to reach out and connect with him and schedule that meeting because he's going to help you. He'll take a look at what you have in place and how to create that financial roadmap to help you and your family succeed, whether it be to retirement, create that emergency fund, or whatever that case may be. Yeah. With that, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah. So thank you once again. And I'd be remiss if I don't mention this really quick. Certainly got to give a shout out to my wife, Alicea Wilson, and a special shout out to my aunt. And I didn't mention this when we were talking about us growing up, but my aunt, Andrea Cotton, she has been amazing, right? After my mom passed, she kind of like stepped into that role as mom. And I remember growing up, she used to take us to church way up out south. We go out to Apostolic Faith Church, and I'd be over her house every weekend, and we'd hang out and do all those wonderful things. So I just want to shout out my aunt, and she's doing some amazing things as well in the education space for people who are looking for medical services, right, and medical certifications. So I just wanted to make sure I shout her out. But if you want to get in contact with me, you can look us up, or look up my ministry on Facebook, which is, again, Terrell Wilson Ministries. You can follow us there. You can also go to www.terrellawilson.com, and that'll take you to our website. And there's a section that says, I think it says contact us or something like that. You can click on there, put in your information, send us a note, and then, I'll be sure to get back to you and connect. Right. So once again, I thank you, Jason, for having me on your podcast, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I believe that as you continue to move forward, man, you're going to impact lives, and people are going to be changed.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. God bless you.
You got it.
And I just want to say Thank you again to our viewers. Thank you for making time to watch this interview with Terrell Wilson. As always, I truly hope that you found value in this. Know that you could also go to www.don'tlimityouridenty.com. As some know, we have a nonprofit. So the goal with our channel is to create awareness, to create a teachable moment to allow you to gain value and wisdom, but also to share about our nonprofit. Terrell Wilson shared an amazing story. He's also locked arms with me. We want to impact the community. We want to work with the youth starting from 5th grade to senior year, offering financial literacy courses, workforce development, and just what if college is not for me? What are some other alternative options? So I encourage you to visit our website. If you feel led, donate, because with your donation, it's going to continue to help us. We've done back to school events, we've done diaper drive, we've done toy drives, and we want to continue to do more to help impact our community. We want to start in the Chicagoland area, and hopefully one day we could go nationally. Thank you, take care, and God bless.